Welcome to The Anxious Voyage. If you think that title sounds bleak or foreboding, one of two things must be true. You're very lucky, or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Welcome indeed. Thank you for being here. We are coming to you, as always, from World Headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut. And at this point, at the beginning of every show, I usually make some completely lame joke about Middletown, Connecticut. But I'm not going to do that today because I am joined by my wife, Ann. And if I make a lame joke about Middletown, she will ask me the question that we always asked our sons when they were little, which is, if somebody tells a joke and nobody laughs, is it still a joke? So I'm not even going to run that risk, but I am going to welcome Ann. Thank you. This is an amazing opportunity. It feels very strange to me too to be doing this, but I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. So am I.
I have talked about you on occasion on the program. And described a little bit about what you do. So I think I want to start with what you mostly do for a living. And then we'll get into painting. And then I want to talk about the things that you say you don't do. So if you would please share with us what it is you do for a living.
Sure. For a living, I'm an interior designer, a home stylist, and a creator of beautiful places for people to dwell. So, and that comes in several different ways. It's not only designing, but I do a little bit of construction work or supervising construction to make it easy on the homeowner so that if there's any renovations, involved, I can help them with that. My clients are really different. They don't know sometimes what they need, and they're not looking for elaborate details. They're really looking to have an environment in which they can feel very comfortable. So I found that post-COVID, our homes are used for many different reasons. People are working at home, they're exercising at home. Rooms now have multiple purposes. And so I guide them through all of that.
When I was first starting my own business in 2004, a gentleman who happened to be with me at the time, who was a graphic designer but had studied architecture before going to art school, was with me when we were contemplating some office space. And it was an older building, brick, and someone had erected, as people so often do, I suppose, sheetrock to cover the brick. And in some of the beautiful arched doorways, they had installed rectangular metal door frames and to put in regular doors. So while I was kind of looking at the space, this gentleman was looking around and up and talking to himself. And I heard him say, the building was talking to them, but they didn't listen. You may actually be the only person I know who understands that. And one of the things that I admire about the way you go about your work is that you're never in a hurry. I guess I want to say to fix something that ain't broke, or to get rid of something beautiful, valuable, even if it's only valuable sentimentally, and to allow the people whose spaces you design or reconfigure to communicate with you about what's important to them, not only in the space, but in the things they may already have in that space.
Yes. each home and each person has a story. So like your friend, I also go into this space and let it talk to me. Every home, or I do businesses as well, excuse me, and they're different. And the architecture is different. The character of the person is different. Their sentimentality is different. Their furniture is different. And I leave all the cookie cutters at home, meaning I don't try to take it and turn it into a box full of new things. Anybody can do that. But my first go around is usually called an assessment. And that assessment is to go in and to look at everything that they have, just sit down, talk to the person, find out what they like, what they don't like, what bothers them. And then I take that all into consideration, and it's almost like a recipe. So I'll grab a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we may have to change this or change that, but we don't change the entire thing, and we just supplement or enhance what they have and what they need.
I don't know if you can do this comfortably, but given what you're saying, if you could move your camera so that our viewers could see the rack that's beside you and tell them where that came from, and then the cabinet that's on the other side of you, and explain what that is and where that came from, because I take it to be evidence of your practicing what you preach.
Okay, so, well, the rack that's behind me, that is an antique baker's rack. And I saw that hanging around a consignment store, and I thought it would make a beautiful bookcase. So you could see the plant that we have there. And the lower shelving I have, it holds my laptop, it holds some files. So it's really fun. And if I do circle the camera that way, that is a wardrobe chest that I've taken and I've put shelves in. I sit in a room, so I practice what I preach, and I sit in a room that we entertain in. We might even dine in. I have an artist studio here when it's set up, and also my office. So that particular closet holds the printer, it holds my paper, it holds some files, it holds some memorabilia for me. So I just open up the doors and I feel like I'm sitting in my office. All my business needs are there, and I don't have anything to worry about. And then if we entertain, or it's Sunday and I don't want to look at business because I need a day of rest, I close the doors and it's now a sunroom.
Yeah, I was going to add the part about that it's a sunroom because it's I had nothing to do with the design or construction of the room, so I get away with saying it's beautiful. Anne designed it, but it is a very beautiful room, and because Anne's a painter, and here comes a segue, and would much prefer to paint in sunlight, that room serves us very well. So I want to shift to painting a little, and I want to talk about the two paintings, which are actually one painting in two parts over your shoulder. And I would definitely like you to share with folks what those are about and why you did them. But first, I want to tell a quick story about the gentleman who built the sunroom. The gentleman's name is Tom Montanari. He's, I don't know, probably 72 years old at this point. He built the sunroom largely by himself. He's as much an artist as anything else. But we befriended him. And so he would periodically stop just to have coffee or something. So he came at 9:00 once on a Saturday morning. Anne wasn't here. And those two paintings that you see over Anne's shoulder were leaning against the wall in the living room to dry. And Tom said, "Who did those?" And I said, "Anne." And he said, "When did she paint those?" And I said, "This morning." And he said, "No, she didn't." And I said, "Well, yes, she did." And fortunately, Tom was still having coffee with me when Ann came home to verify that. So if you would like to talk about those, Ann, either how you went about them or how and why you came to do them, that would be terrific.
Sure. So one of my projects was a charitable project for the Haddam Historical Society. And what they decided to do with the Thankful Arnold House, which was built in the 1700s, I believe, was celebrate Christmas through the ages. So the kitchen represented the 1700s, the living room represented the 1800s. It was kind of Victorian. And I fortunately got the dining room, and that was supposed to be in the 1900s, mid-century modern. Well, in that dining room was a portrait of Thankful herself and her husband. So I needed to take those down and put something in its place, which would be in keeping to the design and the period that we were talking about, or trying to illustrate, I should say. So also Haddam is known for their shad. It's located on the Connecticut River, and they've got a shad museum in the history of shad. So when I painted them, I said I wanted something significant to the society. And what I did was they were dancing shad. And in the exhibit, they hung side by side. But when I paint, so one was at Thankful Arnold spot and one was the other, but they were hanging side by side. And my paintings are interpreted by the individual. They sort of mean something to someone and another thing to somebody else. So they lasted through the exhibit, and I brought them home. And when I got them home, I still saw the fish, but and I laid them down one on, widthwise. And what I saw was a city, and then the fish, and then the reflection of the city in the water. So when I hung them at home, I hung them horizontally, and that's what I see.
I didn't know that part. And as you were talking about that, I noticed, I guess I'm going to have to refer to it as a reflective symmetry that I hadn't seen before. And I don't know if those sort of semicircular items are the fish, or if the fish are smaller than those, but I'm just noticing that the one on the top continues into the bottom frame. When you were painting those, was that deliberate?
Absolutely. It's called a diptych. I painted with the canvases together so that one would definitely flow into the other. I'm not going to turn around, but I could show you that the lower corner of the painting, of the top painting, actually flows to the upper corner of the bottom painting. And in that way, the story gets told, and it's a continuum, so that, they're both joined together as a pair and always will be.
Okay. Is there any chance that I could buy those from you?
Well, all my work is for sale.
I thought you were going to say, make me an offer. Okay, so I promised at the top of the show that after talking about what you do, that I would segue into some things that you claim not to do. And you wrote something at one point for our friend Dennis Potoko's Biz Catalyst 360, which you called Behind the Masking Tape. And if you don't object, I would just like to read a little bit about that. And then I'm going to ask you to connect it something.
Okay.
Sorry, connect it to something. Our lives are sometimes held together by masking tape. No, not the kind you buy in the hardware store. This kind of tape is built by thread, incident by incident, decision after decision, taped over abandonment, unworthiness, guilt, shame, fear, or any other variety of demon. Given enough time, it's strong enough to hold all our cards in the game of adulthood. Every day we are in this game, playing with our deck, held together by that masking tape. Of course, our masking tape is undetectable, even beautiful in an odd sort of way, never noticed by others. It comes in many shapes, sizes, colors, and expressions, and on its surface, it holds any mask you want and sticks you together. So what you say you are not is a writer. And obviously, that's nonsense, because what I just read is absolutely beautiful and you wrote it. So I would like you to talk about that a little bit and how and why you came to write it. And then, I'll make it a separate sort of inquiry, but I want you to talk about your sort of metaphorical notion of the basement. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But if you could please explain how and why you came to write that. And I will just say, for the sake of our audience, when you were writing it, I had no idea you were writing it. You were still protesting that you're not a writer, but I had no idea you were writing that. So if you would be good enough to just tell us what you were thinking, that's just so beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So as people grow up, or there's always expectations. As a child, you're expected to do this. You're expected to get good grades. You're expected to, let's say, play in sports, conform, and you get a little older, and you're in high school or you're in college, and people want to give you advice or direct you to go one way or another way. And then adulthood comes, and you have obligations, and all these things pile up. And I think it was an expression of conforming. Obviously, I used myself as an example where, I always tried my best. I might have taken jobs that I wouldn't necessarily take because, hey, let's face it, the money was good. I had to support myself or contribute to a family. So what happens, and then you just kind of suck it up and put it all together and put a piece of tape on and go to the next year and the next year. And, and what happens, maybe it's a reflective of, I'm of a certain age now, where I said, I've done all these things, not because I wanted to, but lots of them because I had to. Or if you were in a business environment, or even a home environment, and you had to face adversity, and maybe you couldn't show it, or sad things happen in your life and you didn't have time for that because there was another obligation that you had to go and meet. So, that grieving got set aside, the anger got set aside, sometimes even the joy gets set aside, but it all sort of gets taped together, and you walk around with this big smile on your face. And then there's the day. Then there's a day when the masking tape kind of starts to maybe not hold together so much, or that you might decide, what, it's time for me or myself, or to do some of the things that I really like to do, or take a chance that I couldn't because I had family. And those are the pieces of masking tape that come off. And hopefully, the reason that I wrote it is, my mother used to have an old saying. She said, wisdom comes with age. Well, part of that's true. So I decided that I wrote it to help younger people become wiser earlier.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life, from any circumstances, a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
God, I just, thank goodness this isn't being recorded, because I'd be really embarrassed if people saw me sitting here falling in love with you. I was thinking while you were talking that having written and published books for children, that's how I learned what you just described. And it just didn't occur to me that you might have written that for that same purpose, to help people understand at younger ages that if they don't want to put those masks on, they don't have to. I had to relearn that from children. And thank goodness I did. Okay, so I'm not going to act like I'm surprised that you're more insightful than I am. But I don't know if you see it as necessarily connected, but you've shared with me what I'll describe as your metaphorical thinking about basements. And I will just let everybody know you don't like basements.
No.
You can explain how and why you don't like basements. Among the things you don't like is that they're dark and there's not a lot of sunlight, which you absolutely thrive on. But in addition to the way not in addition, part of the way you think about that has to do with the boxes, again, metaphorically speaking, that are in the basement. And I see that in some way as connected to your notions about the tape and the masks that we put on. This is going to be a bad light joke, but would you enlighten us about the darkness of the basement?
Okay. So I hate basement and unfinished. The designer comes out in me, and I want to say unfinished basements that have virtually no light. And usually when they're unfinished, and we, as you know, recently moved, and we took boxes out of one basement and shoved them into another basement. Needless to say, some of those boxes we never opened. They have cobwebs on them. Some basements have mice or bugs or, dampness and darkness. And I made the analogy of it being like your brain. So, I mean, the functional aspects are there. I mean, you've got your heat and your hot water and your maybe running water and some insulation, which serves function that everybody needs. But in those confines, there are boxes. And in those boxes are stored memories, albeit pictures of years ago, or china that you never use, or books that you read and you don't want to throw out. And we accumulate stuff, and we don't want to throw it away, but we don't want to deal with it. So we put it in the basement. And I equate those to things that maybe we need to address in our own lives, but we compartmentalize our brain and we kind of tuck that away, maybe not think about it for years. Unfortunately, in a basement, we can go and open that box anytime we so choose. But sometimes in our brain, the box gets opened when we're not ready to open it, or we're not aware that it's going to get opened. But that's why I kind of don't like basements. I know, it's crazy.
I had a conversation. I think it was late last week. Yeah, today's only Tuesday. It wasn't this week. But I was talking to a very knowledgeable gentleman. Actually, his name is Joseph Carabas. He's been on this show. Mm-hmm. And he was likening fear and ignorance. And actually, he told me that he believes that ignorance is born of fear, and that sometimes we just don't want to know, or we just don't want to confront or contend with particular things because we're fearful of them. But he made what I thought was a beautiful distinction. He said, it doesn't sit very well with me if somebody says, no, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to know that, or pretends as if something is not true or that it doesn't exist. And yet, he said, he's completely respectful of people who can say, look, I know that whatever it is you're about to show me or tell me is true. I'm just not ready to contend with that right now. And I thought that was an absolutely beautiful distinction to make. And all I can think is, and again, metaphorically speaking, if we go in the basement, we may encounter some boxes down there, and we know what's in them, but we're, for whatever reason, just not ready to open them right now. And so extending that metaphor, wow, I never thought about it this way. Yeah, we have to make peace with things before we can contend with them, or maybe sometimes even know what they mean.
Yes.
Is that the way you were thinking about the basement, or am I off a little bit?
No, you're spot on with that. Sometimes we know what's in those boxes. We just not ready to deal with those yet. And so they remain closed. Or, you can even think about it of letting go. some things in our past or whatever's in that basement. We might know it's there. We might want to just keep it there, but we're not ready to move forward or to let those things go. I'll give you a good example, the box of old china. Okay, well, you're never going to use it, but how many meals were served on that? So, that's the type of thing that I'm not ready to let go. And if you equate that to maybe something in your brain, that could be, a negative experience or, things associated with the past that you've boxed up. I'm not saying the China memories or the dinner memories were bad. I'm just using a concrete example of a box filled with something. And then in your brain, there's a box filled with something. Maybe it's, a sadness, an amount of grief that you never really grieved anybody, or the people that did sit at the dinner table aren't with you anymore. So maybe that's a better analogy. And you say, I'm not ready to deal with that yet. I just want to keep that box stored up, because if I don't, I'll really cry and miss people. So it could be that. And then as far as ignorance is fear, I do believe that is true, what Joseph said. I think the better educated, and this is almost like a universal, I mean, we could put that through a lot of spectrums of life. The more you know about something, it does take away your fear. And but people do have the tendencies like, well, I don't want to know. I'm better. Ignorance is bliss, right? They just don't want to know. And lots of times, what you feared most is probably what you shouldn't have feared at all.
I had a friend years ago when I worked for an insurance company, and he had been at that company for about 13 years. He ended up getting fired. His wife divorced him. He ended up going bankrupt. And he also, to his credit, ended up in AA. And he called me one day and he said, you know what I just figured out? I said, nope. He said, I just figured out that everything that I feared most in my life has happened to me. And none of it was as bad as I thought it was going to be. So sometimes it occurs to me, we are our own worst enemies because of the ways in which we project and the things that we project. And maybe most of all, and I think you said something about this earlier, because of our own expectations. And maybe one of the causes of the fear that makes us ignorant is our expectations. And if we either modified them or tried to let go of them, we'd actually be much better off. Dare I say, we might be happier.
Well, I agree with you on that point. And I'll go on to say, I'll share this with you. I remember, and I was alone at that time, we weren't married, and I had a financial thing happen to me. And here I am, an adult woman, and I remember I just went to bed. I just said, well, you know what, I'll just go to bed and watch TV. And that wasn't going to do it for me. It wasn't. I did not feel secure or comfortable. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, well, maybe if I get under the bed, nothing can hurt me. Now, this is an adult woman thinking about, first of all, how is she going to fit under the bed? And can you think about how crazy that is, thinking that if you got under the bed, you'd be safe. But, what this fear did was hit me in a primal area So, I went to primal needs and I needed to feel safe. And then I don't know what hit me. And I said, here you are, you're a woman in your early, 50s. You survived. And I started to count the things that I overcame, the things that I survived, where I was, what the blessings I had. And it took me a while until I felt like I didn't have to maybe crawl under the bed. Maybe I'm okay on top of the bed. And then maybe I thought a few more things and I said, okay, I can get out of the bed and I can, stand up. Now, as silly as all that seems, sometimes fear can just paralyze us and paralyze us of the unknown. And I think that we're very resilient. And to go with what you say, that if we put enough faith in ourselves, and again, I have to remind myself of that, there isn't an adversity that you can't overcome, and you're going to be okay. And you're going to be better than okay.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality.
Where potentiality meets reality.
Where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on DreamVision7Radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brand's distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
We have a little bit less than eight minutes left to go, and I just want to pick up one more time on your contention that you're not a writer, which, if I haven't said it exactly this way, I will now. That's utter nonsense. But you wrote a beautiful piece that I would like you to talk about a little bit, and it's called "Packing My Suitcase Like Grandpa." And I just want to read this little passage because it's just so beautiful. That garden carried us all summer. We planted, toiled, harvested, and celebrated. After our labor of love, we would sit under the grape arbor. Depending on the time of each season, you could rest assured you'd get whiffs of apple blossoms, ripe grapes, and earth. We'd sit there in the mottled sunlight eating fresh peas or peaches right from our own land, telling stories, laughing, and wiping sweat. Oh, those grapes. Those old vines provided fragrant shade, rich wine, and music from a host of birds, a welcome refuge from the hot sun. Oh, would you please tell the rest of that story?
Well, my grandfather was an immigrant from Italy, and the story does he did pack his bags when he came from Italy, and he actually brought, in those days you could, he brought grapevines with him. He brought his grapevines, and he settled in Kensington, and those vines grew and grew. He was a foreman of a brickyard and ran a boarding house so that workers could stay at the house, but they were pretty self-sufficient. And, he knew how to graft trees. We always had a big garden. And, your riches don't come sometimes from a paycheck. And the experience and the nurturing and the care that he gave that garden. And it was always a family event. Actually, it was funny because my grandfather had lost a leg and he was on crutches, and believe it or not, he lived on the second story so he could rent the first story out and have an income. Very tough and very resilient. So I'd be maybe 4 years old and we'd have a brigade. So my grandfather would take his crutch and he'd poke a hole in the earth. My father would put the seeds, and I got the job of filling the dirt over the seeds because my hands were tiny and I wouldn't pack the dirt too hard. But, it showed me a lot of love for a father and a son working together. I got to watch them. I got to imitate them. I got to learn from them. And there's something about that grape arbor and, how nature just shed its light through that vine onto my grandfather and my father and onto me. And I think that's where I began to love sunlight, because it was like the rewards of a job well done. I mean, the smells were beautiful. The air was filtered by the vines and the big grapevine leaves, and the sun would be there. And like I said, we'd be eating something from the garden, still warm. It was just beautiful, fond memories. And all my memories as a child probably were not as so nice. So those little opportunities or pockets of I call them joy. I don't know what else to call them, but they were wonderful.
I would just like to share a little bit more of that story, and that is that you were born relatively late in your parents' lives, and you had a sister who was 13 years older than you.
I did.
Which gave you the opportunity to take what I consider to be a very special relationship with your dad. As a matter of fact, and I want to do this quickly before we run out of time. At the beginning of this story, Packing My Suitcase Like Grandpa wrote, it was Sunday. And what that meant to me so many years ago was precious. We were both early risers, my dad and me. I couldn't wait for him to say, let the girls sleep. Let's go to Grandpa's. The girls referred to my mother and my older sister, but I'll leave that for another story. Oh boy, I wasn't one of the girls today. I was with Dad, and off to Grandpa's we'd go. That, my dear, is writing. And aside from thanking you for doing this with me today, and I know you did that with some trepidation. So thank you. I would just like to share with everyone who may see this that we met fairly late in our lives, and all of my experiences, especially the unpleasant ones, helped me to recognize you for who you are when we met. And I once wrote something about you and quoted lines from a Dan Fogelberg song called Comes and Goes, in which he sang, "The woman is like the tide, she comes and goes. She knows the things that I can just suppose." And I firmly believe that by your willingness to share this program with me, anybody who sees or hears it is going to understand exactly what I meant and exactly why I wrote those words. So, Anne, thank you so much. I'm so glad you did this. And I'm just going to say this too. I'm so glad you're my wife. This is just wonderful. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on the show and having faith in me that I would be able to do it.
Okay. And to all of you, who may hear or see this, thank you all for being here. And I hope you'll continue to tune into The Anxious Voyage. Thank you very much for now.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.